Hey, coaches, this is such a weird time because of the COVID-19, the coronavirus, and our quarantine. We've all had to look to different ways of doing things. And today, my guest is Spencer Dennis from CoachNow, which is an online platform that's merged and just created a community of coaching so that you can interact in session, out of session, between sessions, and document progress of your students and your athletes and how that all goes back. Dude, Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk about the challenge that a lot of coaches have. And I'm going to say this, and this goes across all sports. And I know CoachNow is across every sport.
We are.
Heavy golf interest in the beginning, but it's moved very widely, which is what it should do. There were a lot of coaches that saw people who were technophiles, people who moved into the technology space early on a year ago and went, yeah, I'd like to do that, but I'm a brick and mortar, I'm a dirt under my feet kind of coach. And then when all of a sudden we were stripped of our one-on-one coaching, they looked at those technophiles and went, oh, hello. And so I found that people were kind of stuck. I don't know, if you felt the same way. It's like we want to do better, but here we are now.
Yeah, and I'd say, for the last 6 or 7 years that I've been doing this, right? Because I was a coach. My background, I played golf professionally for a small time, then got injured, and then I coached for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And as a part of that, I coached in high performance academies, like the junior academies. They'd live with us, train with us, everything else. And then I coached independently with tour players and everybody else. And the reason I give that context is that I was always searching for a way to bridge the learning environment gap that we all have, right? When we're meeting in person, it's great, but how do we help them improve when we're not together? And then how do you keep this momentum of progress? Because most of us that are in any sort of skill acquisition business, let's say, there's always these regressions, right? Constant regressions from your athletes. So how can we make sure that there's a better chance for forward progress? And the only way to do that is to have some sort of technology that can bridge the gap between the in-person time and give them access to they need access to who is helping them, mom, dad, coach, whoever. And they need access to the information so that they can keep moving forward. So I give all that context because for years, I've been saying, please don't have your whole business hinge on exchanging time for money. Please don't have your whole business hinge on you being somewhere. I wasn't predicting the pandemic. I guess if I had paid closer attention to Bill Gates and other people, we might have. But more of what I was always talking about is, what if you get sick? What if you get hurt? What if a family member has an issue? Any of these things that are out of our control, your revenue comes to just a screeching halt. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem, right? You're not building any leverage into your business. So as coaches, we're in the business of service, and most service-based businesses don't have leverage. And I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, it is.
If you're in the insurance business, you've got leverage. You've got a whole team out there selling on your behalf. You've got renewals coming in, right? You create a book of business, you get renewals. So for me, I've been in an entrepreneurial family my whole life. And it's like, we got to make sure that you're creating some sort of sustainable business, not just going out there and standing on the range for an hour over and over and over and over again until you're 80 years old and then you die, right? So when I look at the coaches that I think we all most admire, they're probably pretty quick to adopt technology. But I think for the most part, the coaches that we know, especially in the world of golf, the Martin Chucks, the David Ledbetters, those kind of people, they're great coaches, but they're honestly better entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They're better entrepreneurs. So I would encourage all of us to have an entrepreneurial mindset in addition to growing our coaching knowledge.
Well, let's talk about the entrepreneurial mindset because, I'm in a family of entrepreneurs as well. Even though my dad was military, they had businesses on the side all the time. My mom was the same way.
Nice.
My father-in-law had his own business. So for us, and my daughter's 23, she graduated with a master's degree. She's already got her own business, digital marketing business, and killing it just ridiculously. And so for us, entrepreneurship is not the dream to say that I'm gonna go play golf every day at 2. Entrepreneurship was the challenge to create something that you could look behind and be proud of.
Yeah.
What do you see? Because I'm a huge fan of the Gary V's, the Sarah Blakely's, the Rachel Hollis's, right. Those people that speak within the entrepreneurship space. What do you see that entrepreneurship is missing to coaches? What is it that they see in entrepreneurship and they're missing? They're just flat out, it's flying by them. They're not catching it.
Yeah, I think for the most part, anybody that's in a business of service, like I said before, and I'm not talking necessarily like customer service, things like that, but like educating, coaching, helping people in that way. Most of us are afraid to attach a dollar amount to that, right? There's a self-worth issue. Whereas if we all went to school for 10 years, got a PhD, did all the things that you've done, right? And then you've got this bankroll, or you've got this history of a big investment in your career, right? You've got this education. So then you become a psychologist. My fiance is one, so I know how this all works. Yep. You're totally cool charging $200, $250 an hour, whatever, right? Because that's the industry standard. But in coaching, professional sports coaching exactly, or fitness or anything else, there's no real standard, and you can get certified over a weekend. Yeah. Right. So it's like $200 and I'm certified. So there's not this history of spending a bunch of money, feeling like your self-worth is coming along with you. A lot of us are just expected to jump into it and feel like we know what we're doing and feel like we can charge accordingly. So I think there's a disconnect between our self-worth as coaches, and that's something we all have to resolve. And then the other, I think there's way too much fascination with becoming a technical guru and not spending any time learning on the business side. Yeah. Like you go to any PGA show, and I know a lot of people that listen to this are in the golf business, right? You go to any PGA show, you go to all these different educational forums, less than 1% of it has to do anything with business.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Everything is force plates, attack angle, launch monitor content, training, learning, whatever. And that's all great. But my favorite quote was from Martin Chuck recently when he and I did a talk at the open forum. I think it was a couple of years ago now. We're standing on a pressure plate, and he's like, guys, the only thing you should be really measuring is how heavy your wallet is. Like, that is the most important part here. And I believe that to be true. And the reason I say that is that it doesn't matter how much you know if you can't structure an offer around that and share that with someone.
Yeah, 1,000% agree. It's funny you say that, because I remember sitting in grad school on my internship, and, the traditional route of a psychologist and where I did my internship was you're going to write your own grants, and then you're going to work, and they're going to give you a faculty position, but you're going to pay your own salary. Well, I thought, why am I giving 50% up to an institution to do that? And we had a couple psychologists that broke away who were very successful and created their own business. And I'll never forget his name, Michael Follick. And he's a legend in the field of the division of psychology that I'm in. And he sits up there and he says, hey, he's going through it. And I'm, of course, listening to every word he's saying. And he said, I want you to look at our shoes difference. See, the academics, and it's his best friend. And he goes, Tony, turn your shoe upside down. And you have a hole on it.
Yep.
And there it was. And Tony was brilliant. He was an amazing human being. But Mike was sitting up there in his perfect Italian suit, perfect. And he and I were on a symposium together, and I told that story to him. And he was like, I figured one kid would finally go through that and listen to me. And I'm like, dude, I was listening to every word you said. But It's so true, because, I see coaches, and they're so caught up in what we do in our world is, once we see somebody who's figured it out financially, we go sell out.
Exactly.
It's like, no, your time is valuable. And if you believe in your worth, then you'll create an entrepreneur scratching the itch that somebody doesn't know they need to scratch.
Right. Yeah. And this isn't that type of podcast, I don't believe, but at the same time, if you look at any great spiritual leader, right, there's this monastic belief that you need to go live in a cave to be spiritual.
Correct.
Not really. I don't believe that. Yeah. Right. I think you can lead a balanced life. I think if you're a Buddhist, right, it's all about finding the middle way.
Yep.
And I think there's opportunity there in the coaching space. And that's why, when I was coaching actively, I have a heart for all of my athletes. Like, that was the whole world, right? Was helping them be effective. Mm-hmm. So I was doing anything and everything I could, extra 30, 40 hours a week, and not being compensated for it. Right? Texting, emailing, getting all the parents involved.
And that's just considered customer service.
Right. And I broke it down. My effective hourly rate, even though I was 25 years old, charging $150 in a relatively small community. So it was like 3 or 4 times as much as anybody else is charging. My effective hourly rate was $10. It's like, this is not sustainable. I'm burning out.
Healthy.
No, that's the main thing. Like, I wanted to just quit, and I was successful. I wanted to quit for 2 reasons. Is that I was spending so much time trying to have my athletes have that ideal learning environment, like I said before. And I knew there had to be a better way, right? They weren't getting what they needed to be at the level I felt like they could be at. They kept coming back, and their grips were all sideways. It's like, why does this keep happening? Yeah. I know you care, but you just don't have access to the right stuff. So at that time, it was, a perfect kind of storm for us to start developing some technology. And the only reason I was able to, I think, do it is one, or there's two reasons. I had an entrepreneurial family like you, right? So I had this somewhat of a belief and an understanding of the hustle. Like I lived in the back of a restaurant for the early part of my life, and to go serve pizza when I was 6 years old. So I get the hustle. And then the other is that for some reason, I was just way more pissed off on the status quo than anybody else seemed to be.
Yeah.
Because when we built the software, all these coaches were like, oh, I thought about doing something like that, or that's great, I was thinking something too. And it's like, well, why didn't you do anything?
Yeah.
They just didn't have the why, right? The why wasn't as strong as maybe mine was, and maybe the willingness to risk it all. Which I definitely did.
I love that. I mean, yes, we know the hustle. Okay. The Gary Vaynerchuk, the hustle, but
Yeah.
it's more than that, is what you said is, when I remember when I left pharmaceuticals to do this, I was terrified when the Alabama Board of Psychology asked me to come and speak, because I thought, man, they're going to skewer me because I'm doing it different. Because I've always been like you. Don't tell me that's how we've always done it. There's got to be a better way. Okay.
Yeah.
People change because either they have to or they really, really want to. They don't change for anything in between. So I'm sitting there studying and trying to figure that out. And I go out and I open this up, and I was so nervous. I called my wife before. I said, they're going to just crush me. I can just feel the teeth coming at me. And as soon as I was done, I had people coming up to me. All right, how did you set up your business model? How did you do this? And it's funny. I knew that nobody was going to do anything about it, because I know that people don't change. They see it, they romanticize about it, but they're afraid to leave that comfort. We went to the Grant Cardone 10X conference. You ever been to one of those?
I haven't, but I'm very familiar with Grant. Yeah.
Okay. So Grant's brilliant at what he does. I mean, listen, he knows how to move market. He knows how to sell a product. He knows how to get in front of you. Brilliant. Anybody should study him. Yes, he's a hardcore sales trainer. Yes, it'll probably make you feel a little gurgle in your stomach, but that's his job. Okay. That's what he's doing. And I know the people who are behind him, and there's a lot of authenticity there. Okay. He's a South Louisiana guy, so that drew me to him. But we're sitting he's at the Mandalay Bay, and we're in this 15,000, 10,000 forum. I mean, he comes out and it's just a rock show. I mean, he has Damon John there, Lewis Howes there. I mean, the shows at night are Snoop Dogg. I mean, this dude's connected. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what a brilliant business model. Because 98% of the people aren't going to do anything, and they're all going to come back next year.
Yes, they will.
Preaching. Come on, Uncle G, 10X, 10X. And, they all walk around, 10X. But what happens? They're going to be right back here next year. Yep. It's brilliant. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, people have ever wondered what the health model industry is. The health industry, it's not much different.
Well, yeah, gym membership is built on that entire business.
Exactly.
Right?
And I'm not saying as coaches to feel bad about that. It's true. It's human nature.
Yeah. And I think for anybody in this business, right, in the coaching business, you're getting into it because you want to help people. You love it, whatever the sport might be or the activity that might be. You have a real passion for it.
Yep.
But I think as much as you're acquiring all these certifications, you need to really be either hiring people that are more business savvy, right? That have that business drive, or you need to become that person. I would usually vote, surround yourself with better people, because then you can just do what you love and they'll just drive traffic to you and they'll manage the day to day and you're good to go.
Has that worked for you?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. For me personally, I mean, cause I have a lot of tools for sure, and a lot of grind, and I'll do whatever I need to do. But the proudest moments I have are when how should I put this? When I'm checking in with the team, not directing the team, right? Because I've hired people that know what they need to do and are autonomous in their activities, and they believe in the overall mission, and the mission is clear.
Okay.
Right?
Let me ask you this.
It's difficult, but it's possible.
Well, let me ask you this. The reason I'm asking is because, software being SaaS-based, end user, and did you get people who came from that world who just worked different products, but it was the same application?
It's been 50-50. So if you look at our sales and support team, all of them are ex-coaches / ex-athletes. Because it was more important to me that they knew how to speak coach. There's an authenticity there, right? That's a problem in most software as a service things in the world of sports. And I say this kind of brazenly because I think it's important. if you look at most tools that are sold to coaches, they were not built by a coach.
Yeah.
99.9% of them were built by a casual weekend athlete that thought they knew what a coach wanted.
Yeah.
It's changing a little bit now, which I'm happy about. There's a couple platforms out there that, in the fitness space and a few others that had trainers behind them. But I think it's a real problem if it's an athlete that was, playing golf on the weekends that also has a software background. They're not going to build what coaches and athletes ultimately need to run businesses and improve their skills. So when I hired people, I wanted people from the coaching background, so that when they got on a call with you or an academy, they're like, yeah, I was you. I know you. I know all the things that you struggle with. You're probably struggling with this, and this, right? They can anticipate anything. And it doesn't matter what sport, because we all speak coach.
Yep.
It's just more the intricacies of that particular sport that we all learn as we go. Then when it came to the actual development of the software though, right? The operations of the business, the development of the software, heck yeah. I'm hiring people that have a background.
It's a widget to them.
Yeah. It's the language they speak, right? So I think when you're surrounding yourself with people, you just need to look at the holes or the gaps that you have and make sure you bring in somebody that fills that gap. And that's their favorite thing. Like, my favorite thing is not spreadsheets. My favorite thing is not tracking all of the conversion rates and all the different lead mechanisms that we have. That's not my favorite thing. I know what we need to do, but I'm not going to be in there tracking it every day. Yeah. Right. So I need somebody that like wakes up and is just stoked on that stuff.
Well, the reason I asked that question is that's been the struggle that I've had in my business forever. You talk about scalability, right? I'm only as good as the hour rate that I train. Okay. Now I have some business arrangements where I can extend outside that, but it's hard when you're a cost per pull. Okay.
Absolutely.
And it's scary when you have, I looked at my office last year and I had seven staff members I was responsible for their well-being. And every day I pulled the lever to fulfill the 7 people in here.
Yeah.
Now, the problem that I had was my pull covered them. But what I didn't see was them going 5 times the revenue in another area.
Yes. Because
I couldn't communicate the language. I failed on that. I couldn't tell people what we needed to do and how it was different, because I've always felt like and this is just the discussion, I always feel like I turn to somebody, I'll say, okay, Spencer, tell me how I need to do. Okay. And I know that my business is different, but instead I'm like, it can't be different. It's got to be the exact same thing as somebody who does that. Like, I'm not going to sit there and film. If me and I are working one-on-one, I'm not going to film those sessions and put them up, because coming to me is different than going to a golf coach or a guy doing pitching lessons.
Right.
They're coming to me and the last thing they want to do is see their stuff all over social media.
Well, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting, right? Because yes, you're dealing in a business that is inherently more insecure. And what I mean by that, the people you're dealing with, they don't want their content out there. But I would also vote, because I've been doing this a long time, I would also say that a lot of people that have their swings out there also don't want them out there.
Probably.
But they're out there, right? I can't tell you how many 7-year-old golf swings I see all over social media. And I guarantee you that parent did not give permission for that.
Yeah, I know.
Right? I'm standing on the shoulders of a 7-year-old.
Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of messed up, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. 100% agree with that.
So I think ultimately, if you can get permission, which I think like George Gankis, we all know him at this point. I think most of his athletes, right, are that teenage age bracket where they're like, yeah, I'm stoked to do this. Like, I want this to be a thing.
Yeah, I want to be on Gigi's page so I can get some exposure.
Right. So that's a symbiotic kind of arrangement there, which is great, and all power to them if that's what they're able to do. I love it. Honestly, it's great. But we at CoachNow, right, we've grown, and we don't highlight anybody's usage of our platform. Right. It's private by default. There's no discovery mechanism in there. There's no opportunity to even attach to another coach or see another coach's video. But the reason we've grown is positive word of mouth, right? People are like, this is a platform that really benefits me. So I think ultimately any coach's business, you have to lean on that word of mouth, but how can you amplify it? Which is your point, right? How the heck do I amplify this?
Yeah. And that's why I've always gone to content. I've always seen people who they're like, how do you get the word out? I'm like, put out content. There's a book that I use quite a bit. Do you know Jonah Berger? Have you ever read his book?
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
No.
Jonah Berger wrote a book called Contagious.
Okay.
And I want to make sure it's Jonah Berger. Hold on, let me look it up. I think it is. There's a Jonah Lair. There's a couple Jonahs, and one got caught for plagiarizing. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, let's not pump him up.
Okay. So. Jonah Berger, yes, he wrote a book. He's written a couple: Contagious, Invisible Influence, and he's written one called The Catalyst that just got released.
Okay.
Contagious was how things become contagious in a social media world. Yeah. And it's about having currency. It's about having, tradability. It's about having a common language, and people use it and they can share it. And the invisible influence the same way. And then the book he's written, The Catalyst, is how to change somebody's mind. And I think those are the things that people in coaching should understand. Like, yeah, you see forefront leaders and say, okay, but somebody who's coming to see Martin Chuck probably knows that Martin is going to be based in a certain way of doing things because he's done it. Yeah. He's proven that platform. Yeah. That's his platform.
Yeah. And Martin, I think Martin's a great example actually, because he's a power user of what we do. He was like literally one of the first coaches that jumped on board because he's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
We got in touch through a mutual friend, and he's on his way to the grocery store, and he's like, oh my God, the grocery store should be using this. I should be using this with my kids to get them to take out the trash. Right. So he saw it immediately from a business standpoint, and then it trickled down to, yeah, obviously I can coach more effectively and help people acquire their skills better, but ultimately this is a business tool for me. This is why I like it. So I think as any coach out there trying to grow their business, I usually go to a conference, every year, multiple conferences a year, and I'm usually following some sort of marketing guru that's going up there and telling everybody about SEO and social media growth and advertising and everything else. And all of that's very important. It is a leg of the stool, right, or a leg of the chair, but it's not the whole thing, because ultimately, the reason you're successful, the reason Martin's successful, the reason Ledbetter's successful, the reason anybody that we admire is successful is because of retention.
Yeah.
Not because of their ability to close leads. It's their ability to keep that person satisfied.
Well, that's a great point, because I think a lot of times we in coaching see ourselves as a commodity, but we're not a supplement that somebody bought online in an impulse buy of zinc and it's sitting in their cabinet. If they're not utilizing your coaching services and not getting better, not only are they going to fire you, but you've lost them for a long time because you didn't bring value.
Yeah, and I've always said this too, and whether you use, because this isn't a CoachNow pitch, but it's like whether you use our service or something else, right? Because maybe there's something better in your industry if you're listening to this. But ultimately, if you don't have, in today's day and age, an app on someone's device representing your relationship with them, you will lose them to somebody that does. That's just how it is, right? Yeah. And that app cannot be Instagram. It cannot be TikTok. It cannot be Snapchat, because there's too many distractions, right? That's not about you and them. It's about them and everything else, right? So you need a dedicated way to communicate with your people. And that's not email and it's not text message, because again, you're competing, right? So you got to find some way. And I definitely would not encourage you to build your own app. That is an absolute shit show nightmare. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And honestly, be very weary of anybody that says they can build you one. Even if it's a branded version of the thing that they have.
It's like building a house. It's 3 times more expensive.
Yeah. And there's a maintenance fee, right? Your house breaks all the time, right? You're on the hook for it, right?
Yep.
Versus in our case, right? If you're using a piece of software like us or Salesforce or something, you're renting it, right? And it's their responsibility to fix it and grow it. And you're not on the hook from all the financial side. And it takes way more money and way more time than anybody ever is going to quote you. So that's a side tangent, but I think ultimately as a coach, and you're in the same business probably better than most, is like you're really focused on improving these relationships that you have, right? Just really building deep bonds with your clients.
But that's been a challenge.
That's why they come back to you.
But that's been a challenge, right?
Okay.
And the challenge with that is, and just disclosure, that's why I love having these conversations, because I want people to see the conversation I have, is when we launched Catalyst School, that was the first time, to be honest with you, that I felt like I finally found the relationship.
Okay.
Okay, to the masses. I know that people come to find me privately.
Yes.
You have a player who's struggling. There's a problem. I solved the problem. I'm not going to have them for life. I've solved the problem. If they want to stick around, that's great. But most people go, I got over the nerves. I played a lot better. I got my college scholarship. Thank you very much. And then they may circle back, and so I've always tried to figure out what it is. Is it a book? Books help, but I follow the advice of Ryan Holiday. You don't write books for sellers. You write your next book so it'll sell your 5 ago books.
Yeah, that's true.
Man. Okay, you sell your bookshelf. I've always wanted a digital platform piece, which is
Mm-hmm.
education, but I never got excited about, and I've got them, I've done them with like, here's the 14 steps to being a better putting coach. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until Catholic school popped up when I was like, oh, it's interactive.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I needed. I needed that interaction. And, you know, I don't know if we're on the right platforms. I mean, I know our platform where we host it is the right place because I
Mm-hmm.
know how what the engine is. But it's been hard because,
Yeah.
you know, I look at coach, like a baseball coach, like a hitting coach. I look at a golf coach. It's like, how do you differentiate yourself? I'm not the first person to talk about the psychology of coaching,
Right.
but it's really the first thing that has gotten me so jazzed up. I can't wait to do every call.
Well, I think that's one important part to pay attention to, right? You have
Yeah.
that burning desire, and
Yeah.
that goes back to what I said in the beginning. Like I was the only one waking up, apparently, because nobody's still done what we've done ultimately. Even now, I'm
Yeah.
still probably the only one waking up, like just pissed off about why we're okay with the status quo in instruction
Mm-hmm.
and coaching, right?
Yep.
So for you, like if you're getting super amped about this path, then you've clearly found something, and the market or the audience will find you, and you're seeing early evidence of that. It
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like even when we talk to Golf Digest or Callaway back in the day or these big brands, everyone's like content, content, content. And for me, it's more about, yeah, content's cool, but how do you personalize that content?
That's the thing.
Right? What is
100%.
Netflix doing now, right? They're creating all these choose your own adventure shows and movies. Why? Because it's personal,
Personal.
right? You can interact with it. You can kind of, it's all canned, but you can feel like you've got a little bit of choice there. So as you're, creating your content, it's like, well, what pathway can people go down? Does it make it more complicated? For sure. But if you're creating a mixture of canned content, live calls, clinics, virtual summits, you're creating this overarching value. It's pretty hard to say no.
Yeah.
Right? I got content I can watch anytime, and then I've got this ability to find some level of personalization in that, which I think is crucial to growing your business.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because when you said that about Netflix, it hit me. You know, people always use the Netflix blockbuster analogy, right, of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to, have you ever listened to the podcast Business Wars?
I have.
Okay, his whole piece on Netflix and Blockbuster.
I'll have to listen to that one specifically.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
I've seen so many Netflix blockbuster things these days, but yeah, it's a
Yeah,
fascinating thing.
but what was brilliant about it to me was, as he's talking about where Blockbuster made the mistake of bringing Carl Icahn back in, or Carl Icahn brought in the guy that was running 7-Eleven because he wanted to improve the user experience in the store, but he knew nothing about him. Netflix is not and he said it very clearly, Netflix is not a movie business. It's not an entertainment company. It's a data collection company.
Sure.
That uses movies and videos as its currency.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that hits me with coaches is how much do we really know our information of every user that comes into our club. And I've tried to make that point at our country club is like, if Brett McCabe shows up to play on a Friday, how do you know what I drink?
Yeah.
How do you know what I eat? How do you know all that? And
Yeah.
we've got a group of 20 of us that play every Saturday morning, and they don't open breakfast till 10 a.m. We're like, what are you doing?
You're missing the boat here, guys.
And they're like, well, it's expensive to open for 20 people and then wait an hour. I'm like, oh my God. And so it's one of those things like, if you don't know your customer and you use your service as the currency, that's at least my belief.
Yeah. And I think there's, for everybody listening, you've given some good references because I think ultimately this conversation, right, it's more about educating yourself beyond the technical aspect.
Yes.
And I think there's another guy there's a few guys that I'll list off now, and they all have varying levels of kind of to them, honestly, because like Grant Cardone, he has that like, I'm a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But, hey, he's being successful. So there's things to learn there. Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels, great person to pay attention to. The hook, the story, the offer. I'll leave those little nuggets for you there. Go research hook, story, offer. It's a very simple architecture to understand how you can market yourself differently. And there's another guy that has a little less of the ick feeling because he's a little more straightforward. A guy named Aaron Fletcher with the Fletcher method. And he has something called Launch Maps, which is this interactive canvas. I wouldn't necessarily recommend purchasing the software because it's not built out fully, but get in front of one of his long form
Is it like
webinars.
a Jeff Walker based approach? Are you familiar with
Well,
him?
I'm not familiar with Jeff Walker.
Okay.
No, but I can tell you Aaron has done a really nice job of distilling these very simple forms that you can fill out to kind of understand the way that you're going to create your funnel, quote unquote, right?
Okay.
And the thing that I really like about what he's done is he talks about your currency. And I think you need to understand what your currency is. And it's not always as obvious as you may think.
No, it's not.
And you may not be charging accordingly for that currency, right? So he speaks a lot about people that are in the business of online coaching, right? So I'm going to consult businesses like you and I do as well. And you want to create something that has that high ticket value, but usually you're going to do way better in group coaching scenarios than you are an individual.
Yeah.
Because you can leverage the community aspect to drive the personalization and like kind of the tribal vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like what most coaches do now is they have no mechanism to build a community around the individuals that they coach, right? Yeah. Every experience is a siloed experience. And that's something similar to you, right? Is that I'm going to come see you. It's somewhat of a in confidence relationship, right? Like, because I don't know if I want everybody to know that I'm seeing a mental coach and that I'm, a basket case, right?
Right.
But I think there's less stigma to that now, which is great. So how do you take all those individual interactions and then wrap a community around them so all of those people can rally around Dr. Brett? So like, I'm a Dr. Brett disciple. I'm a Dr. Brett disciple, right? I'm a Tony Robbins disciple, right? He's done a great job of that.
100%.
I'm a Ledbetter disciple. I'm a part of Ledbetter's world. I'm a Stack and Tilter, right?
Yep.
So anybody listening to this, it's like, well, how can you take all these individual moments that you're being charged, that you're charging for, and then how can you wrap another offer around it to bring everyone together to drive you forward? Right? And that's part of why we built the software that we built. It's like, well, I'm having all these interactive or individual lessons, but the only way that these people know that they work with Spencer, and this was many years ago, is because they see everyone on the range practicing a certain way. The people that I coach practice differently than everyone else. Mm-hmm. So they knew like, oh, you work with Spencer, let's go play golf. Let's get together. Let's have some fun, right? If I had had the software that I have now, I would have had all these individual interactions within what we call spaces. And then I would have put everyone into groups. And I would have started in the overall Spencer Dennis brand of coaching group. And then I would have created subgroups. Here's my juniors. Here's my pros. Here's my, the ladies that want to play together, right? You build these larger communities and then sub-communities. And if you do that, people are with you for life, man. Because it goes back to what you were saying a minute ago. I also imagine, because this is how it is at my golf course, they don't care if I show up or not. Mm-mm. They don't care. And that's why golf is dying, ultimately. There's no relationship with the facility and the golfer, whereas CrossFit cares if you show up. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing in your business to help people understand that you care about them?
That's why CrossFit people are brand evangelists.
Oh, it's crazy, right? That's why if you go to years ago, I mean, there's so many different little weird stories about this, but if you go to a room, and I have recordings, I've heard of this, when somebody goes, how many people use, PC? How many Windows users? There's a lot of hands that go up, but they go, how many people use Mac? Right? Yeah. They're cheering for it. So while all of us as coaches are a lot of times out there just diving into technical stuff and having arguments on Facebook about vectors and coupling and all this other stuff that I see on Facebook about coaches arguing, it's like, what are you doing to actually build deep, meaningful relationships and let your athletes know that you care? And if you're coaching juniors, how do you let them know and their parents know that you care? And I think if you're creating systems that allow you to be in front of your audience in whichever way you can to get that overall message across, you're going to kill it. Martin Chuck's a great example. He's got Tour Striker Nation, man. I'm a part of Tour Striker Nation. I'm all about it.
Yeah, Driveline Baseball, same way. I don't know if
huge, right? So what are you doing to build an evangelist network, right? Those raving fans. And I think all of us have the capacity to do that, but we're maybe focusing a little bit too heavily on the technical improvement in that particular sport, the wins and losses. Ultimately, all that stuff's going to come if you can just keep getting people to come back.
Do you think most people, okay, I'm going to ask the asshole question. Okay.
Sure.
Do you think most people that we've seen who have hit it knew what they were doing when they hit it, or did they just fall in it?
Oh, I think most of us just fell into it. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's as, I don't, I'll say this though. I'll say this. I think moving forward, there's opportunities to be more calculating, right? Because the information's there, it's readily available. You know what Gary Vee's quote unquote doing. You know what Grant's doing. You know what Russell's doing, right? You can deconstruct their offer and be way more strategic than you could have been 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. When I was actively coaching, Instagram wasn't really even a thing, right? So I couldn't even capture little cool coaching moments and share them with anybody. Because I could do it on Facebook. That wasn't really the right scenario for it, right? It wasn't the right place for that. So you use the tools that you have at your disposal. And I think now there's no excuse why we shouldn't be super proficient as technicians, but there's no excuse why we shouldn't be super proficient from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
But it's scary, right? I don't know. How old are you? How old are you?
37 now.
See, you're a boomer. Okay. So, you're a millennial. So as a 47-year-old, 40, I'll be 48. It's scary. So my daughter, who runs my social media, master's in digital media, she knows her shit. Okay.
Yeah.
She's got, it's not just, hey, I know how to put a swimsuit on Instagram. It's she knows the algorithms. Like, Dad, you've got to answer a DM in a certain amount of time because you will get killed on your algorithm.
Sure.
No idea. Okay. So, but that's so overwhelming to me.
It totally is, man. Yeah.
I mean, and thankfully I've got a guy in my office, Brett Basham, who Brett had no experience in any of this, but was so interested. He probably filled up. He probably answered every funnel ever known in social media. He's clicked on it.
Yeah. My partner in crime did the same thing. Yeah.
Yes. He clicks on, and I'm like, go for it, brother. Buy what you want to buy, get what you need to get. Yeah. But he's figured stuff out. And it's so, and I, when I tell this to customers that are listening, it's not that we're manipulating, it's anything. I believe, and now I'm going to be honest with you, I feel so strongly, like you do about your product. I feel so strongly by it as something to go to the masses. Like, I want to stand on top of the biggest mountains and yell about it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I've always felt that way in the past. I was proud of my work, but I didn't know where it fit. And I think it's kind of, I'm a big fan of Donald Miller and StoryBrand. Are you familiar?
I'm familiar with StoryBrand, yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. And his analogy is be Yoda to their Skywalker. Everybody in your audience is a Skywalker. You're not Skywalker. Be Yoda. You're not the star of the show. Be the guide.
Yes.
And that really changed my mindset. And getting this team in here where they're like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're running our offers. And I'm like, okay, just do what you got to do. Like, just tell me where to show up, when to show up. But it's overwhelming. Like, what am I supposed to put on Instagram story? What am I supposed to put on Facebook? What am I supposed to put on Twitter? Like, oh God, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it totally is and can be. And I feel the same way. I mean, I'm not inherently a show. How do I put this? I'm not inherently someone who's like, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's not who I am.
Yep.
And that's why my social media presence is not something, amazing by any stretch, but the community we have inside of our platform is very, very strong.
It's got a very strong social community. Yes.
Yeah. Cause I feel like I'm more of the Yoda to this community than I'm in the star. I'm not the star, right? I'm trying to put everybody out front of me. And that's the same thing when you hire people, is that ultimately my parents have said this in a really good way. Like, the best managers they've ever hired are their bosses. Meaning my parents those owners are trying to hire them a boss.
Gotcha.
Because that person cares so much and they can run it autonomously. And then they're telling my parents, hey, you need to make a video for social media, or, hey, you need to do this, or, hey, you need to do that. Because I think as creatives, someone running your own business here, it's a lot easier if you have a team around you that are telling you what they need from you versus the other way around.
Yes. But yeah.
It's a lot easier 100%. To be the editor than the creator, right?
Yes.
Right. You go create it, I'll edit it. Great. I don't want to look at the blank page though. Yeah. Right. There's a really great social media guru out there. Like, there is many, but his name's Jason Capital. He's a young guy. A friend of mine spent some time at his conferences, and the inner workings of that conference, though, is that if you're a fan of Jason Capital or you follow him at any moment, you think, right? And I thought this too, dude, this guy's on Instagram all day. Yeah. He's on social media all day. I come to find out he probably spends less than an hour a week on social media at all.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm the marketer. I don't want to be marketed to. I am the marketer, right? So he uses these tools to his extreme leverage, and he has a team, 2 or 3 people, young people in their early 20s, right? Just young, hungry people that say, Jason, I need a video for this, 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 and this. Then they edit it and they roll it out. And it's just all automated on his behalf.
Do you know Bradley Lightspeed VT?
I don't. Oh, I should know that. No, I don't believe I know them.
Okay, so Lightspeed VT is who's our virtual training platform.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason why we were connected to him is because of Grant and the people behind him and those two.
Understood.
Whatever. Okay. But for the longest time we had stuff on Lightspeed, and it's a virtual it's a I don't know, it's not what you guys do. It's different.
It's like a Skillshare or it's a module learning platform.
It's a module learning platform.
Yeah.
And I did my first set with him, and I was so pissed off because I was like, it's not working. The sales call and everything. And I had spent time with Brad, and I watch his social media, and I'm like, God, man, the dude gets it. He sits in his office, and he's the closer. Okay. He knows how to close deals. Well, he knows how to close deals. He can sell. Okay. He's a hustler. And, he's showing videos of him in his box at the Las Vegas Knights games and all this stuff.
Sure.
So I go out to Vegas. This is what started the Catalyst School. This is why I love talking with people like you. And we're going to figure out how to do more together because you've got me so fascinated now. It's only taken 8 years. But so we're sitting there, and I go out and meet with him. And I'd had a conversation with Jeff Smith, Radar Golf Pro.
Yeah, I know Jeff.
And Jeff is what was the impetus for the Catalyst School. He said, I'm sick and tired of seeing your videos going to the students. It needs to go to the coaches.
All about it, man. They're the bullhorns anyway.
Yep. And he said, coaches need to hear your content. Yeah. He said, you work across, I want to know what Nick Saban says. I want to know what this coach says. I want to know what that, I want to know, right?
Yeah.
He said, I can't get my players to listen to my videos. How am I going to get them to listen to your videos too? And I was like, okay, great point. So later that afternoon, we go over to meet with Brad, and we're going to do a podcast with Brad Lee. And I sit down, and Brad goes, your first series didn't work very well, did it? And I'm like, nope. And he goes, sit down. And he brought his team in. This was a day before New Year's Eve. He said, sit down. And we spent 3 hours educating his team, educating me, educating Basham, who was with me. And Brad's like, you're missing it here, 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 here. This is what needs to happen. This is how it needs to do it. And I'm like, dude, where the hell is that information? And he went, that's a great point. And so we started talking, and then that's how Catalyst Live started.
Yes.
We took his closer live for people in business and copied it with his permission. He was like, please do, because it benefits him. And it hit for me because it started getting the information out there, share that information. And Brad, what he does, what I asked him is, I said, same to your point. I said, dude, do you have people on your camera all day long? He was like, no. They come in for a couple hours. I have a couple meetings. They film it, and then they go home at night and they cut out 5 or 6 little short videos and they just send. Yeah. And I'm like, because I've had full-time videographers 4 years in my office and can never get content out. But now with Catalyst Live, we've got coaching calls going on constantly.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what I always tell coaches. Like, if you're the one that's holding the camera when you're giving a golf lesson, you're not present with that player.
Sure. Yep.
Hire somebody at $15 an hour, raise your rates $15 an hour, and have somebody responsible to film you, the interactions, the welcome, and tell the story about you. And
and I think Eric, and I always butcher his last name, Coganaro. I can never say his last name, and I feel terrible about it because I've known him for so long. He took that same advice, because I've given that advice as well. I did it to Cameron McCormick a few PGA shows ago, and now Altus is blowing up. And it wasn't my magical sage advice. It was just more of like confirmation, like you should do this. And Eric hired a great person named Mary Langle, who's just in the background.
Yeah, Eric Cajorno. Yeah, Cajorno.
Yeah, I can never say his name. Thank you for saying that. Cajorno, thank you.
That's exactly. I'm like, dude, you got to come up with a better stage name.
Yeah, because I butcher it every time. So he's a great example, right?
Yes, he is.
He actually hit us up at CoachNow and said, hey guys, I love the service, but I'm not actually coaching anymore. So I'm not going to use it in the way that I used it before. Right? He's moved beyond the in-person time. He's created leverage for himself in all these different ways. And I have an interview of him 4.5 years ago going, man, you're doing it right. I just wanted to call you out and just let you know you are doing it right. And it's really cool to see how he's escalated on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So not everyone's meant to be in front of the camera, right? He's a dynamic guy. And not everybody is meant to just grind on some sort of software startup, right? Yeah. But you do have to find your path forward. You have to find your currency, like you were saying. And ultimately, you got to find the audience that really resonates with what you get fired up on. And that's why we don't market to athletes.
Mm-hmm.
We market to coaches, right? That's our business, is we help coaches be more efficient, make a greater impact, and hopefully generate more revenue in all these different ways. And we provide a lot of education to help them do it.
So we've beat around the bush a little bit, but tell me, tell the coaches on here why Coach Now. Well, what is your prime? What is your 330 down the middle of the fairway?
I think internally, and we don't say this externally probably enough because it's a little confusing for people, but I think anybody listening to this, we pride ourselves in athlete relationship management.
CRM,
but for athletes, right? But it has coaching tools to help that relationship grow, right? So a CRM is typically meant to manage that relationship for a sales lead, but they have no idea they're in the system, right? Salesforce, I don't know if I'm in your Salesforce pipeline, but in Coach Now, it's collaborative, right? So it's inherently improving this relationship because there's a give and take on both sides, but we created a lot of opportunities for the coach to have leverage to personalize, customize, and enhance that overall relationship. But we took it a step further, and we want to make sure that the people that support the athlete are also in the loop, right? Because far too often we have interactions with an athlete. The athlete is now the conduit between all the professionals that help them, and it's a complete disaster because the athlete doesn't know what they're doing.
No.
So we've provided an opportunity for coaches to have one-to-one interactions or one-to-many interactions, however you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 1 to 2, 1 to 5, 1 to 5,000. And then the other side is that if there are other stakeholders in the relationship, they can passively be aware of what's going on at all times, or they can be interactive. So we have a lot of parents that just follow along with the relationship that the coach has. Like Img Academy is a great example, right? We work with every single sport at that facility. There's 300 coaches plus, and every one of them uses Coach Now. There's 1,200 full-time kids, and there's 17,000 kids that go through that system every year in their summer camps. How the heck do you stay on top of that, right? And at the full-time boarding side, the parents pay a pretty penny, right? We all are very aware how much people spend for this kind of thing. But before Coach Now, and they will admit this, all the parents knew is that if the food was good or not. Because that was what the kids would complain about.
They can see their coaching lessons. They can see their progress, their developmental pathway.
Right? So anybody that works at an academy, a boarding academy especially, knows at the end of the month, you're on the hook to do some sort of eval for the month. And it's like, I don't know. I'm going to spend a whole day trying to remember what I did for the last 30 days. So parents can passively follow along, and it improves the relationship, which is a sticky relationship a lot of times between coach and parent.
Yes, it is.
I went and spent 2 days at IMG telling people that parents aren't the problem.
No, they're not. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a big part of my speech because all of the coaches were like, oh, these parents. And I said, no. You have no transparency between what you're doing and the parent. Coach, so of course they're going to be pissed off.
Coach, you are coaching their most valuable asset in their life, their children. Don't make them the enemy. Learn to coach them better.
Yes.
The parent and the player.
And ultimately, you are not only in charge for the technical information, but you're in charge of how everyone communicates.
Yes.
Don't be a victim to Facebook, Twitter, anything else. Don't let them dictate how they communicate with you. You choose because it's your life, right? You're managing your life. So you're going to choose a communication platform of your choice. If it's Coach Now, great. If it's something else that works better for you, that's cool too. But just choose something.
Mm-hmm.
And if your students say, hey, I texted you this. No. I don't communicate this way. I communicate this way.
But you only force them through the
because otherwise your life sucks.
Yeah.
Right? Because now
you're answering every second.
Yeah. If you use Coach Now, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all this stuff, I'd rather have you quit Coach Now because you've just added one more communication platform that confuses everyone. Right?
Yeah. So
we tell coaches, and I would tell anybody on listening to this, whatever you do and you believe in it, you have to go all in. And this is the way I do business, right? Right? It's a marriage, right?
Yes.
So if you don't practice a certain way, if you don't communicate a certain way, if you don't show up a certain way, if you don't hold yourself in a certain way from like respecting all the people that are involved in this, I don't work with you.
Yeah.
Right. And if you do that, you're clearly identifying your avatar, right? Which is a very salesy mechanism, right? You're deciding who you like to work with.
Yep.
You're able to then charge accordingly, and you create instant respect from the beginning so that you're not the victim. Like coaches are way too much the victim. They're not getting paid enough.
Yep.
And they're getting beat up on the communication. So jumping back to IMG, I'm in the room just like shaking these coaches and going, the only reason you have a problem with these parents is because they don't know what's going on.
Yes.
They're paying you ungodly amounts of money, and all they hear from you is when their kid's in trouble, or if their kid won a tournament or didn't.
Or they had a bad day.
Yeah, that's the only thing they hear about.
Yep.
And we can't be so focused on the end result in that training environment, because that is just a pressure cooker, man.
Yeah.
If the only measure of success is if you win or lose. So really our big passion, aside from all the things that I've said, it's about that relationship, but ultimately that relationship is going to be successful if everyone has a clear vision or a clear visual on the progress, right? So we say, like some of the tenets on our company, we're like, well, we want to make sure people are connected to the people, right? You got to be connected to the right people. You got to know what to practice and how to practice it. Stay connected to that all day, every day, right? So the reason we don't improve is because we're clueless about what we're supposed to do and we have terrible memories, right? And the third is that you need to have a clear vision of your progress, right? So I use this analogy all the time. Why do we climb mountains, right? Well, one, it's nice to go up to the mountain, but what do we do when we first get there? We look back to see how far we've come.
Yeah.
If you're not giving your athletes and their parents, more importantly, an opportunity to see how far they've come, then you will lose them all the time because
1000%.
their expectations go along with them.
I told that to a gym a long time ago. I said, why don't you guys do pre and posts? Well, I said, my God.
It's the easiest thing in fitness in the world is a pre and post.
Unbelievable. And
weight loss pictures.
Yeah, weight loss pictures or measurements. Like, yes, you've lost 10 pounds, but you've lost 47 inches. You know, people are like, 47 inches? My God.
Well, you look at the golf example, right? It's like, well, I was shooting 90 last year. Now I'm shooting 75, but, you know, I'm still not hitting at 340. It's like, come on, man, see how far you've come. And I can't tell you how many cool stories we've heard from even PGA Tour players that were on the brink of just confidence meltdowns that were able to look back and go, oh, this is what my swing looked like. This is what my fitness was like. This is what my coach, because that's what we are. We're ultimately an interactive journal with a lot of cool stuff around it.
No, I've used,
And I think ultimately, and you know this because you're in high performance, like the best athletes do typically three things. They think about what they're going to do, they do it, and then they reflect on what they did.
Yeah, it's well said.
Most casual athletes just show up and hit balls, right?
And
they didn't have a plan or a reflection.
That's right. Well, it's what I told all of my athletes. I said, during this time right now, you have a choice. And when you show back up at the first PGA Tour event, if you can look in a notebook and realize how far you've come, then everyone else is using, because I always say your impression in the moment is guided by your emotion in the moment.
Yeah, man.
And if you don't have any guidelines, what you realize is you're 3/4 of the way up the mountain, and you feel lost and you're tired
100%.
and you're worn out. You don't realize you've walked forever.
Yeah. And I think the act of journaling, just taking that step, if it's in a book, that's a great first step. But how can we be smarter about it, right? How can we use different media sources that are maybe a little easier? Or you can write in a journal and take a photo of it. But whatever you're doing, it needs to have the opportunity to be reflected on over time. So an organization and access are paramount.
Yeah.
Because I lost every journal I had. Because I played golf at a high level, like I said, I worked with some great coaches. I don't have any of it. It's all gone. All the books are gone. All the audio cassettes I have are gone. But in today's day and age, there is no excuse for you to not have record of something, whether you're just keeping it in Dropbox or Google Drive or somewhere. Like, you got to document where you're headed. And especially in your relationship or any kind of coaching relationship, if I'm spending money to see you and learn from you, I should have a record of that interaction, just flat out because my memory sucks.
Yeah.
Right.
Completely agree. Go check out CoachNow.
Yeah, please. Yeah. And even if it's not something for you, hopefully along the way, we can provide you at least some education.
High school coaches using and managing. I mean, how does it compare to like Teamworks?
Great question. So The way that we interact more effectively is we care more about the how you do something and the why you do something and the who you do it with, more so than the how many of something you did.
Okay.
Right. So we're not a rep counter.
Yep.
We are a skill building technical platform, and more importantly, a communication platform for coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a high school golf coach, if you are a track and field coach, if you're a tennis coach, it's going to be perfect for you. It's a little bit of a stretch if you are a football coach, but I will say one of our most popular things is quarterback coaching, kicking coaching, defensive coaching. Like if you're looking at specialist things within our platform, we kill it.
Two components of being a catalyst for people is that your philosophy must be written down in a binder that follows you annually. Okay. And it grows and develops annually. It can fit. And two, every player must have a formal player development plan.
Yep.
Because if you don't have a formal development plan that's communicated on a regular basis, then your players are going to get frustrated because they go, oh, wait, I just did what you told me to do and I'm not succeeding.
Yep.
And so
I think a great example would be IMG, just because they have multiple sports. It's an easy one to reference. Soccer uses it. Well, they all use it, right? Soccer, football, baseball, everybody uses it, and they use it in that exact way. Especially right now during COVID, which is where we are. Every kid has their own individual environment where they're journaling, interacting with their coaches, and then they have a group component where they're interacting that way. And the nice thing about what we've built is that you can still use other coaching tools. We're not pretending to be the end all be all for anything. But I can tell you that if any tool allows you to export something, it could and likely should live inside of what we do. Because it allows you to track everything and all the collaboration around it versus having all these little disparate channels, which I think is the most crippling effect of a coach. Is that, to your point, I don't want to know how to manage Instagram and this and this and this and this and this. Like you got to consolidate your channels. And if you can't do it, maybe the last thing to say on this is like, you got to hire some people if you can to do it with you, or find a partner that believes in you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Dude, thank you so much. This is awesome.
Right on. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I appreciate the conversation, and I hope that we can do more of these because we're coming from the same areas.
Absolutely.
More so than I think we realized.
Absolutely. Make sure you check out CoachNow and give Spencer a follow. It's great, valuable information. And listen, Coach, here's the deal. If you're not doing the things to keep your students healthy, you're not doing the things to keep your students engaged, you're not keeping the things to keep your students journaling their progress, they're going to go to your competitor and do all those. So
that's going to happen. Yep.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, man.